Flags flying at half-staff across the state and the country tonight, honoring the victims of that supermarket shooting in Colorado. What we're now learning about the suspect and the victims.
Restaurants, retailers, and more can bring more customers inside. A closer look at the governor's latest executive order. Plus, a triad shelter dog named after a popular commercial character finds a forever home. More people are getting vaccinated. Case numbers are dropping. Positive signs across the state leading to more loosened restrictions.
Today, Governor Cooper ordered our next steps on the path to normalcy. Some places can now open at 50% capacity, others at 75%. And a handful can open all the way with some social distancing, of course.
It is a big deal for all kinds of businesses that managed to make it over a year with strict rules in place. But let's start with the big number, 100%, and the businesses that can fully open up.
WFMY News 2's Grace Holland found out some are ready to go, while others will take things slowly.
A year into the pandemic, after shutdowns and restrictions, business owners have mixed feelings about returning to full capacity, but they all say that things won't look the same as they did before 2020, with safety precautions like masks still in place.
I started getting back my mojo.
The mist of uncertainty is starting to clear over Greensboro businesses as more customers return.
We're seeing a lot more foot traffic.
To shops like Jennifer Graff's Vintage to Vogue boutique.
We've been preparing this reopening for a year in different phases.
Friday, retail shops, museums like the Greensboro History Museum, and salons will be among a handful of businesses allowed to reopen at full capacity.
Being allowed to fill up a space, one might not have even thought of that a year and a half ago, but now it's a big deal.
But some will hold off on taking that step.
I understand the need economically to try to, have a larger capacity, more revenue. That's great. At the same time, it's more important to me that the safety of myself and my clients and my family.
Jamie Wright co-owns Salon 818 and is seeing one client at a time.
Flooding these businesses now at 75% or 100% capacity, I think is just going to be we're going to see case numbers rising.
International Civil Rights Center and Museum CEO John Swain says they'll hold off on increasing capacity as well.
I still have a staff of people that we must protect. And one museum is not the same as another museum. Some museums have outside spaces, and therefore they can accommodate more guests.
He says the center's business model has completely changed in the last year, offering online tours. Graff says it'll take time to break customers out of the habit of shopping over the computer.
Now that smaller businesses will be able to open their doors, the reason why people shop at small businesses is because it's an experience.
In Greensboro, Grace Holland, WFMY News 2.
The Greensboro Science Center will also be able to bring in more visitors. Thousands check it out every year. We asked if they'll make adjustments starting this weekend. They told us they are still working on a plan.
There are plenty of businesses that can't fully reopen just yet. Restaurants and breweries can do 100% outdoors, but they can only be 75% indoors. For bars and concert venues, it's 50% both inside and out. WFMY News 2's Alma McCarty has reaction and found out the significance of this next step.
For more than a year, we've shared their stories with you. Downtown business owners like Seth Mapes of the Bearded Goat and Seth Kevorkian of South End Brewing have described the highs and lows of the global pandemic. Easing restrictions is certainly a high point.
Spring has brought sunnier days and the continued hope and belief that we will move past this pandemic.
Improvements in COVID-19 metrics leading to eased restrictions starting Friday at 5. It means more people will be allowed into breweries and restaurants.
This step forward for businesses is a great one.
As well as movie theaters, arenas, and bars.
It's great news, 100%. Getting 50% indoor and outdoor is better than 30%, obviously.
As a brewery, South End can open inside at 75% capacity. Outside, a full 100. Owner Seth Kevorkian explains their plan.
So the indoor, probably not going to expand to that right away. The 75% still requires a 6-foot spacing between the tables, which provides, comfortable, safe distancing between parties. But outside, moving up to 100% outside, we have plenty of room to spread out the tables and add some capacity over there.
On the other side of Lewis Street, the Bearded Goat must abide by stricter rules as a bar. 50% occupancy now allowed indoors and out.
It opens up, a lot more, which is fantastic. All we want to do is be able to serve people at a safe distance, keeping everybody, safe and keep everything clean.
As the weather improves and more people feel comfortable coming out, downtown leaders say they'll lean in to having more outdoors.
We've got cool vibe going on with the street dining. Let's keep it forever. And so that allows these restaurants to not only survive, but to recoup business that they've lost over the last 12, 13 months.
The alcohol curfew will also be lifted under this new order. For the first time in many months, businesses will be able to serve alcohol until 2 a.m.
Gyms and fitness centers are also among the businesses with loosened rules. They can have 100% capacity outside and 75% inside. We spoke to Planet Fitness about what this order means for big chains and also locally owned spots.
I'd argue that there's very few industries that were impacted by COVID more than the fitness industry. When we're closed, we're closed. We can't do to go or do things outside at a very reasonable capacity. So for us to be able to sit here and see us inching back towards our traditional operating environment it's fantastic. I've got a little bit more pep in my step, I can tell you that. 2020 was one of the most difficult years managing and operating our business. And I'm hopeful that as we continue to progress through here.
Well, movie theaters can open at 50% capacity under the new rules, and Regal Cinemas will be among those to reopen. Theaters will start reopening next week. You might remember the company closed all of its 530 theaters nationwide back in October. There are 2 in the Triad, one in Greensboro, one in High Point. The phased reopening will kick off with a limited number of theaters for Godzilla vs. Kong on April 2nd, then Mortal Kombat on April 16th.
There are some other details you should know about the updated rules. Regardless of capacity limits, businesses are required to enforce 6 feet of social distancing. Mass gathering limits could expand to 50 people indoors and 100 people outdoors. Capacity rules for large stadiums stayed the same at 15%, and the mask mandate remains in effect. The new executive order takes effect this Friday at 5 p.m. and runs through April 30th. Well, today, the state also adjusted coronavirus guidance for public schools. The health department says daily symptom screenings are no longer required. Physical barriers no longer recommended. 3 feet of social distancing is adequate, and they recommend that all grade levels operate under Plan A.
Most Triad school districts have either already moved or plan to move all grades to Plan A. Winston-Salem-Forsyth is close, but some middle and high schools are still on a rotating model. At tonight's board meeting, they discussed next steps. No changes just yet, but they are meeting again soon. They expect to vote on a final decision Thursday. As for Guilford County Schools, all students are in person in some capacity, but some are only going a couple of times a week. Earlier this month, we asked Superintendent Dr. Sharon Contreras if a Plan A was coming soon.
We have said from the beginning we believe students should be in school. However, I have spoken to the middle and high school principals, and it would be very difficult to make this happen at this point.
Now, the district could change its tune. The board has a work session on Thursday. The next scheduled meeting isn't until April 13th.
Well, another Triad County is moving to vaccine Group 5 ahead of schedule. This afternoon, the Davidson County Health Department announced it is offering vaccines to anyone who wants one as long as they meet the age requirements. Hours later, all appointments for the week were booked. More will be opening next week. Rockingham County is also the other Triad County that moved to Group 5 for vaccinations this week. To find out where you can get your shots all across the Triad, go to WFMYnews2.com.
2 Greensboro men are charged with multiple felonies, and murder charges could be on the way. Investigators say Evouare Collier and Dorian Taylor were in Miami Beach last week. They say the two men drugged and sexually assaulted a woman at a hotel last Thursday. Hours later, 24-year-old Christine Engelhart was found dead. Investigators spotted Collier and Taylor on the hotel surveillance video. Officers arrested both days later, charging them with felony sexual battery. Investigators are waiting for a toxicology report and are looking into more charges. Collier's sister said her brother has never been in trouble, and we learned he has no record in Guilford County. Taylor only has a driving infraction, which was dismissed.
Asheboro police identified the teenager killed in a shooting last night. 17-year-old Nicholas Johnson was shot on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. Officers tried to save him, but he died at the scene. Investigators believe the deadly shooting was in retaliation for another shooting in Asheboro on Sunday night. A different 17-year-old was arrested in that case. The shooting led to a disturbance outside of Randolph Health, where the victim was initially treated. A Randolph County commissioner called the incident gang-related, but police have not commented on that claim. The SBI is investigating after a Davidson County deputy shot a man this morning. They say officers responded to a domestic assault call on Decker Road in Thomasville. When they arrived, they say the man aimed a bow and arrow at them, and that's when deputies fired. Kenneth Coble is now being treated at the hospital as the investigation continues.
We are learning more about the facility where two wolves attacked a woman over the weekend. As you know, the Conservator Center in Burlington saw a similar attack in 2018. An intern died after she was mauled by a lion. Well, Haley Quay, the victim of this past weekend's attack, says she's doing better. But many who heard her story want to know who's regulating the Conservator Center. It's not the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, known as the ACA. It handles places like the North Carolina Zoo. The Conservator Center is regulated by the USDA. Back in 2019, the center's executive director explained why they don't have the gold standard AZA accreditation.
Accreditation would not make us a more safe facility, and we believe that the licensing and federal oversight that we're already under is meeting the needs and concerns.
We asked the North Carolina Zoo about the AZA. Leaders say only that 1 in 10 facilities are able to earn that license.
The tornado that touched down in High Point last week was more powerful than first reported. The National Weather Service says the winds were stronger and the path longer. They upgraded it to an EF1 tornado with 95-mile-per-hour winds. It was on the ground for 2.5 miles, knocking down numerous trees and power lines. Fortunately, no one was hurt. And Tim, the National Weather Service was out on Friday, the day after those strong storms moved through. And initially they said that it was on the ground for about a mile.
Yeah, so what happens in that process, Julie, is they got more reports of damage, went in, reinvestigated today and said, yeah, in fact, not only was it a longer path, but a little bit stronger on the winds too, just about 10-mile-per-hour difference. Let's talk about the weather for your tonight and your tomorrow. It's pretty foggy in many parts of the region right now. I expect it'll be foggy for you tomorrow morning. The commute not looking the best, with fog and also rain likely on the way. It's not going to be cold. We're in the mid-50s and upper 50s right now. That fog is starting to build in, and I think many of us could have near zero visibility to start tomorrow. But as far as rain goes, it's not here at the moment. We're going to see some showers building in from the ocean heading into tomorrow. Mainly a morning issue. I think we're looking at primarily before lunchtime for all of these showers to kind of make their way and move closer to the area. As far as the afternoon goes, things will start to improve. You see those showers kicking out of here by that lunchtime, and we get a little bit of breaks in the clouds by the end of your Wednesday, and just a little clearing should make a big difference. Going from about 60 at lunchtime, closer to 70 for the high for tomorrow. We'll go for a high of 69 for your Wednesday. Coming up, though, we'll talk about thunderstorm potential for the end of the week.
Flags across the state are back at half-staff tonight. Governor Cooper ordered the move to honor the 10 lives lost in the Colorado supermarket shooting. The White House did the same. The flags will stay at half-staff until sunset on Saturday. The same applies to flags around our state.
These are the faces of the lives lost at the supermarket in Boulder, Colorado yesterday. 10 people between the ages of 20 and 65. 3 worked at the grocery store, 6 were there shopping for groceries, 1 a Boulder police officer, Officer Eric Talley. He died after running into the store to try and stop the shooter. He leaves behind a wife and 7 children.
Our hearts go out to all the victims killed during this senseless act of violence.
I can never thank Officer Talley or his family enough for their sacrifice, but we will not forget it.
Arrested a suspect, Ahmad Alissa. Court documents show he bought the gun he used just 6 days before the shooting. Investigators still have not mentioned a possible motive. The suspect's relatives believe he suffered from some kind of mental illness. He is now charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder.